Hello, everyone. Welcome. We're so happy to have everyone here. It's good to see all of you joining us today. A little bit of what we are and what's happening. BLP is Business Law Partners. It's a law firm, and we are welcoming you to this webinar on immigration Costa Rica. So a little bit about ourselves right off the bat. BLP, again, we are a firm. We have offices in all of Costa Rica and Central America. We are a one-stop shop firm with 28 areas of practice. We have specialists and experts in law and tax, in real estate, in corporate, and immigration is one of our strong areas as well. My name is Catalina Soto. I am in the real estate practice. My specialty is specifically real estate development and construction, all things construction as well. But today we are going to be focusing on immigration. So we have Marco Avellan and Natalia Solórzano. They are our experts. And again, they are like our reference in anything that needs to be immigration-wise, top notch in all senses. And we welcome everyone here. We're very happy to have you here and have them here with us today. It's an honor. Thank you for being with us today. Michael.
Thank you, Catalina, and thank you everyone for joining us today in this webinar. And I hope you enjoyed all the information that we're going to share with you. And if you have any questions, we will love to answer it at the end of the presentation. I will explain four of the most common categories that we have in our immigration regulations that are very popular and probably are the ones you are seeking or looking for to apply in Costa Rica. As you may know, Costa Rica in the last years has become one of the most attractive countries to relocate, especially in the last few months with many changes happening, not only in the United States, Canada, but also in Latin America. Costa Rica has grown with a lot of people interested in relocating to the country. And the reason of this is because so many advantages we have in the country, such as location, culture things, easy way to get to the country, and also all the amenities that we offer to the people. So Costa Rica, in regards to the immigration matters, immigration law, has worked very hard in getting different options and different categories that allows foreign people to come to the country and relocate and start living here with their families. But so today I'm going to focus on four categories that are most common categories in the country: the investor, the renters, the retirees, and the digital nomads. A lot of these categories that we are going to discuss today has been receiving a lot of changes in the last few years. So I will talk a little bit about the changes, a little comparison what we had prior 2023 and what we have now applying in current. Digital nomads, for example, is one of the most attractive categories. We want to develop a little bit about this kind of category, how you can apply, how you can use the category, and then to jump to other categories more permanent. So we're going to start with one of the most popular categories, which is the investor category. As you probably know, before 2022, we had a law with certain regulations ruling everything regarding investors. Prior the changes, you can use a corporation, invest $200,000 in a property, and apply for residency in Costa Rica. That changed with the new law that implemented in 2022 and was with the current regulations after 2023, when it becomes effective at the total applied. That is Law 9996 that you may hear about it. This law changed the whole category of investors. So when I had the opportunity at the moment in 2021, 2022 to work on the draft of this regulation, and one of the changes, or the major changes they wanted to introduce, was to reduce the amount of investment. So prior that, this law we were talking about investment of $200,000, and now we're talking about $150,000. That's one of the first changes they made on this category. Then they start to modify a little bit how the government wants you to invest in Costa Rica. So they divided it in different options. One of the options they have was regarding the purchase of a property and register this property under your personal name. So that's one of the major changes that we have on this category, right? So before that, having the property on the name, it wasn't not actually deal. A lot of people doesn't like the idea to have it on a personal name. They usually use the corporation. So they decided in this new law that investing on your personal name is going to be the easiest or the fastest way to access for residency. Now, they did not eliminate the way you can invest using a corporation, but it changed a little bit the concept we had before. If you have a property, for example, registered under your Costa Rican corporation, you can still apply for residence. But now, what is important is not the value of the property in that case. What is important is the value of the shares that you have on your Costa Rican company. So the investment is going to be reflected on the value of those shares. So you have to increase the capital value, the capital shares value of your Costa Rican company up to $150,000. But there is another change when you're using a corporation, is that you have to register the company before the tax administration. And this company must become an active company with an economic activity. So the company will pay the income tax or service tax, depending on the activity of the economic activity this company will have, and it will be reflected in the tax administration payments, right? That's one of the changes we have. So what is the normal case we usually have in our offices regarding this category using the corporation? People usually purchase a property, a condo, a house, put it on the company, and you rent the home in different ways. You can use different Airbnb or any other platform you want to rent, or yourself. You can rent yourself. So when you start renting the home, that's when this activity can be registered before the Costa Rican Tax Administration, and that's the moment you have the company active at this office. And that's how you comply with the requirements for using the corporation. So it is possible. However, we need to structure very well what we're going to do when you explain what kind of business you want to have. If this is a property you're going to rent, yes, you can use it. But we have to increase the value of the shares of the property of the company. That's very important. Other changes we have that is more clear now that was clear in the prior law is that you can actually invest in a fund in Costa Rica. If this fund is regulated and is complied with every single requirement, the central bank at the all entities that regulates this type of investment, you can use the investment in the fund to apply for the residency. We have to invest at least $150,000 as a minimum investment. Also, we keep the same category of investment in protect areas, national parks, or for environmental progress. Yes, you can apply. It's a little bit different. We have $100,000 of investment, but you can also apply. I don't recommend to go that path right now because it takes a lot of steps, especially because we need approval from Setena, we need approval from ICT, and other government entities could delay the processes. So I really want to focus today in those four that we really recommend you to apply, and that the process becomes more effective in time. It's already have a big delay in immigration, but if we work on these four that I just mentioned, it's going to be better. Personal investment, increase of the value of the property, the company shares, venture capitals, or if you want to invest in a fund. Other important thing that I have to explain to you is that when you apply for temporary residency, the temporary residency is valid up to 2 years. That's very important. So you have to keep the investment that you are using to apply for the investor residency category for the next 2 years. Once you get to the second year, we will be able to renew it for another 2 years. And that is a very important detail here. When you come to your third year of temporary residency, you will be able to jump into a permanent residency. And that's the moment we will not need to show anymore the investment that you made, because you will become permanent. So that's very important to keep this investment for the first 3 years. Then we can move forward if you want to sell it, you want to transfer. But for the first 3 years, you cannot touch it. So because it's your backup of proof that you actually apply for investor using that investment. Important things, dependents can be included up to 25 years old. That is something that changed with this new law. In the prior law, investor can include dependents under 18 years old. And the ones or your kids or children between 18 and 25 must enter into a special category. This law unified those, and now you can include your dependents under 25 years old if we can actually prove they are economically dependent of the main applicant. Important matter on this category that will be replying the rest of categories is that you are not allowed to work in Costa Rica on your personal behalf. You can have a business, yes. You can have a Costa Rican corporation running a business, yes, you can. What you cannot do is work on your personal behalf, on your personal name. You cannot be registered before the tax administration on your personal name. That's what is actually restricted. So I wanted to clarify that you can have a business, yes. You can run a business, yes, you can. But it's the entity that one is going to be registered before the tax administration. Regarding the rentier, this is another category that has become very popular lately. The reason of why it's becoming very popular is because on the investor residency, if you purchase a property and you put it on a company, but it's your personal home, you will not have a business on your company because it's your personal home. It's where you're going to live. So we jump to another option because we cannot go to that path. So we jump to another option, which is the rentier. The rentier category has the same benefits, and we want to talk about the benefits in a moment, but had the same benefits as the investor and the retiree, the same path. The difference here is how we prove the income. So what we need to do is to prove immigration that we have an income of $2,500 or more per month. That's what we need to prove. Okay? And we also need to show that this income will be effective on a permanent and stable matter for the next 2 years. So how we can prove this? We have 3 options that we can offer to you. And we can guarantee you that this is the best path to do it. Because we can use different options to prove the income. But there are 3 that are more faster and easier to prove that income. One is if, for example, you own a business abroad, and through that business, you, as an owner, you receive dividends. If we can prove that the dividends are $2,500 or more per month, you can apply. Of course, we need to prove that you own the business. We need to prove that you're actually going to receive the dividends. We need to show in the bank statements where you receive the dividends, and we have to prepare a certification of public accountant. But that's one of the ways to prove that you have that income. Second option, and we work a lot, lease of a property abroad. If you have a property abroad that you are in rent and you have a lease agreement on that house or that property or that office, and you receive $2,500 per month, and this lease is signed for 2 years, we can also use it. We will still need to create the CPA, which is the certification of public accountant, but we will base that on the information that you gave to us. The other option is investment in banks, foreign banks, for example. And if your investment produce you an income of a rent of $2,500 per month or more in interest, for example, that's part of the concept of the rent. We can use that information too. And I now have to clarify something that is very important for you to know. One of the changes on this new law. Prior this law, you came to Costa Rica, went to a bank, deposit $60,000, and you get a letter. That was the famous deposit, long-term deposit. So what the bank did at the moment is that they took the $60,000 you deposit, divided in 24 installments of 2,500 and give you back the same money that you deposit. Now that is eliminated because that's not represent a rent. Okay, so it is important. Right now, if you want to use this figure, we have to talk to the bank and ask them, okay, how much money do I have to invest in Costa Rica that give me $2,500 in interest? That's the way it works. That's the correct way to do things. The $60,000 deposit is eliminated. It is not possible. Okay, I know a lot of people is doing this, but it's a risk because at the end, if immigration wants to review the type of investment you made, they will ask the information explaining bank how much money Marco deposited to receive 2,500. Okay, that's very important for you to know. It's always a risk, but it's not the way to do it right now. They eliminate this option. I know it was easy to do it in the past. I understand completely. However, it's not the way it is now applicable, unfortunately. Regarding benefits, I will go to the tax benefits at the end, but in this category, same as investor, you can include dependents, same benefit covering under 25-year-old. Also, it's going to be approved for 2 years. You can renew it every 2 years. Same as the investor, we need to prove in 2 years that you keep receiving the income. However, the main requirement that immigration is requesting right now is not to keep proving that you receive the income. Right now, they are asking that you have a Costa Rican bank account and you make a deposit of $2,500 per month. So at the end of the second year, when we need to go with you to renew your category, we will need to actually request the bank statements when you make the deposit at the bank of $2,500. When you need to open the bank account? After the approval, not prior the approval. After the approval, that's when you have to open the account and start to make the deposit. Something important. I receive a lot of questions about this. Can I use the money? Yes, that's the idea. That you put 2,500, you pay your social security, you can pay your water bill, your electricity bill. The idea is that this money is at the same time invest in Costa Rica. That's what the immigration authorities requires. Okay, so what is important in the rent here, the change on the new regulations that is established actually will be indicated in the approval resolution is the bank account. I'm going to move forward to pensioner or retiree. This one is the most faster process we have right now. And I mean faster is because it has a little bit fast track and depending who applies for it, depending on the age of the applicant. If he's a person older than 65 years old, I'm talking about less than a year because the other categories usually take more than a year in getting approved. I know it's kind of frustrating. I understand that very well. I understand that this process should be much faster. Yes, that's correct. Unfortunately, right now, the immigration authorities has not only a lot of workflow, a lot of work, because Costa Rica has become a very attractive and a target country for people to come to the country and live and relocate. But the problem is they don't have enough personnel to resolve cases. And that is the situation we are having right now with these delays that we are facing. But the pensioner actually is a process that it takes less than a year usually. It's always depend on the technician that has the document to review it. But the principle, the main requirement here is to prove that you receive a pension of $1,000 or more for life. I will explain you why I say for life. According to immigration regulations right now, they want to be sure that the pension that you are receiving, you're going to have it forever until you're dead. Because what they felt in other cases on certain letters that they received in the past is that established that you will receive a certain pension for 10 years or 15 years. And they felt that what happens is we get to the 15th year and what's going to happen with the income. So they now require that the letter said that it's for life, or at least indicated that you will receive the payment until your final days. So with the letter of pensions, with the pension letter, we have to review it from which country you are going to request this one. For example, if you request this document in the United States, you can access this through the Social Security Agency. There are private companies that actually gives pensions, but in order to use those letters, we need to prove that the company that is actually paying this pension is regulated by the United States government and is actually entitled to pay pensions. That's very important. It's not impossible to use it, but we need to prove it. That's one thing. And the other important thing is the process of legalization of this letter right now is that we need to take you to the U.S. consulate in Costa Rica with the letter, with an appointment, and legalize it locally. What's the reason is this probably changed later, and we can update this if this is a change on the last regulation that was published last June. They don't allow notaries to be involved in the legalization process. So in these letters, must go to the notary first and then jump into the Secretary of State for apostille. Since they are not allowed any notary to be involved on the legalization process, that's why we need to take the letter to the U.S. consulate in Costa Rica. But we cannot do it on your behalf. You are the only one. We can take you there, but you are the only one who can be able to get the legalization locally in Costa Rica. Now, there is a change coming in on this regulation, which is a directriz that we call in Spanish. It's a regulation published by Immigration 220 that will have some major changes in the future. I know they're working on it, but we need to wait if they make any changes regarding this realization part. We will see. But for now, this is the way it is. This is the way it works. So we have to go. Regarding Canada, for example, or any other place in the world, usually the pension, the government agencies in charge of this, they will issue a letter, and you can actually apostille directly in the correspondence entity in charge of this step. Same as the other categories, you can include dependents. It will be approved for 2 years. You can renew it for another 2 years. Also, same as the investor and the renters, this gives you path to a permanent residency. Once you become permanent, we don't need to keep showing the letter saying that you received the pension of $1,000 per month. I'm going to talk about Social Security in Costa Rica. And I have this slide just for Social Security for one important reason. This applies for all temporary residencies. This doesn't apply for nomad, but this does apply for investors, renters, and retirees. At the end of the process, once we get the approval of the residency, we will need to register you before the Costa Rican Social Security. It is mandatory. There's no option to avoid. There's no option to jump into it. We have to take you to the Social Security registration process. even if you have your Social Security abroad, even if you have a private insurance. So what happens here, and that is a big decision, how you want to apply. Because how you apply is how you impact the payment of the insurance here. If you apply as an investor, we can show them an income that you have abroad if you want, or local if you make deposit in a local bank account, for example, or in account abroad. So we can show them your bank statements of the last 6 months. So my recommendation is to use an account with a lower amount. So when we show Social Security your income, we can work out on the monthly payments that you will make with them. If we are going to use the rentier, we will have to use a minimum income of $2,500. So they will base your income on $2,500. If I use the pension, they will base your income of $1,000 or more, depending what the letter says. And that is very important for you to know. We're going to still have to show bank statements in those processes for registration. And the issue here is this can be discussed individually, because I know this is something very personal, because it goes directly to your income. We can work out a strategy here, but it is important for you to know that income will be the base of how they're going to use for making the payments of Social Security. The good thing is, if you're coming with a family, everyone is covered with one payment. So it had their advantages too. Not everyone pays, only the main applicant pays the insurance. If you have a family, you can cover your family there, all dependents under 18 years old. If you have dependents above 18 years old to 25 years old, we will need to prove that they are economically dependent and they study. They are students of an institution. Okay, we can prove it. We can include it on your insurance, but we need to do some extra steps. Okay, something very important about this is in our service proposals, Social Security is included, same as the minor exit permit, and the reason is because it's part of the immigration process. You cannot get the DMEX card without the Social Security registration. So it's part of the immigration process, so we include it there. It's part of the package, it's part of the service we give. Also, the minor exit permit, because the minor exit permit at the end, if you have children under 18 years old, you need the permit to exit them out of the country when you become a resident. So it's part of the process. So it's included there. It's part of the immigration process. Even if we are working, for example, Social Security with other entity, it's part of the process. So we don't do separately. We include it. Because the idea is to have everything ready for you at the end of the process when you come to the final picture at the end. Let's talk a little bit about benefits. With this new law, and I want to tell you that this new law that start to apply on 2023 on effective matter has a lot of incentives. It's not a lot of incentives. They have two specific incentives on it, specifically that is very interesting for you. One is to bring two vehicles into the country without taxes. So that's interesting because you can bring two cars. You can think in bringing a boat or a car. If you have an helicopter, for example, you can bring an helicopter of a car, helicopter of a boat. I mean, we can mix that. So the good thing is you don't have to pay income tax on this. You don't have to pay the taxes for nationalization. The second important and very interesting benefit that a lot of people are using is for the households. You can put a container and bring your personal things for the house that you have in Costa Rica without taxes. There is not a list, a specific list, what you can include there. But to give you an idea, is everything that you need in the home: sofas, beds, mattresses, the microwave, the refrigerators, etc., etc. We can discuss this in a more direct matter, more direct call and we can actually give you maybe a list of things that we know you can actually include there. Another personal belongings that we have, for example, clients who bring very specific things that they own and they wanted to keep, so that can be included. There is something important that I have to explain about this. When you can enjoy these benefits, when the process is approved, not before. So we have a lot of cases when clients prepare the shipping, prepare the container, and they haven't even started the immigration process, and it doesn't work that way. When you become a resident, I think that's the key. When you become a resident when the resolution is approved, and when you finalize the process with the obtaining of the DMEX card. That's when the process is done, not when you apply. When you apply, you can remain in the country for more than the time that was stamped on your passport. Yes, you can. You can overstay if you want after we submit the application. But that doesn't mean that you are a resident. And that is something that confuses people sometimes. They think when they submit, they become resident. No, you are not a resident yet. You are waiting to get the residency, but you are not a resident yet. You are going to still be considered a tourist with an exemption that you can overstay, basically. Something important that you can also do is you can homologate the driver's license and obtain a Costa Rican driver's license. That step can be done after the submission of the application using the resolution of immigration, the filing sheet, but that driver's license will valid for 6 months. So my recommendation is to use your international driver's license for the time they granted you to stay. Once the process is approved, make more sense to get the Costa Rican driver's license. And the reason is when you become a resident, you will see that when you enter into Costa Rica, first, you can use the citizens line, and second, you will not receive any stamp on your passport. So you will not see any stamp of entry. That's the reason why it's better to have a driver's license. For Costa Rican's case, a police officer stops you and check for the entry stamp. Even if you're a resident, you can explain, I never received a stamp, but I prefer you to have a Costa Rican driver's license to avoid any inconvenience. Let's talk about the digital nomads. This category, I don't know, in the last 2 years has been more of the most popular categories we have. Even if we made a change in our legislation at the end of last year, that was September to last year, when they changed the legal stay in Costa Rica as a tourist from 90 days to 180 days for category 1 countries. Not everyone has these benefits, but it's something important to explain that 180 days is not a mandatory thing for the inspector who receives you at the airport. They are allowed to stamp up to 180 days. I know that most of the cases you will see your passport with 180 days, but it's not that they have to give you 180 days. They can give you 30 days. They can give you 90 days or can give you 60 days. Okay? They usually put 180, I know, but it's up to 180 days. So they make another change on the law. So if you enter in, coming constantly, and you stay here 6 months, and then do the border run, come back, they probably put you less time. So we have cases where they put 20 days, 15 days, or 10 days. So that's when the digital nomad visa becomes a very interesting option. If you are coming to the country, you want to live here to get the experience of Costa Rica, get to know the country, get to know everything, the culture, how you can develop yourself here. But you have your business abroad, that's the first option that I can recommend to you. Because you can keep working from abroad, you can be living in the country with all the benefits as a resident. And then if you really like the country, say, no, this is Marco, this is the place I want to stay, we can jump into the other categories that I mentioned above. Or it's not in this presentation, but you can also jump into working categories linked to Costa Rican companies. But this is another subject where we can discuss in another webinar. Will be very interesting too. This is an option. But the good thing with the nomad is you can jump into categories. It's not limited. Benefits. In the other categories we mentioned before, we will need criminal records, birth certificate, marriage certificates, apostille. But in the digital nomad visas, the main applicant doesn't have to show just the income. Just the income. And as you can see, if you are coming alone, you have to show that you have an income of $3,000 per month for the last 12 months, for the last year. If you come here with family, you have to show $4,000 per month. Same thing for the last 12 months. We need to prove that in the last year you received $4,000. Family can be included. They can work remotely. They can go to school. The only restriction that you will have is that you cannot work for local companies. That's very important. You cannot work for local companies, but you can keep your work abroad. You don't have to pay income tax return because you don't have any income in the country. You are not working locally. And since we are a territorial for tax matter, what is produced here is what you pay taxes. In this case, you are not receiving income. You are receiving your income abroad. You can open a bank account, yes. You can bring your money from abroad to live in Costa Rica, yes, you can. But your income has to remain abroad. You cannot receive payments locally. This is the presentation we have for all of you today. Those are the categories that I wanted to discuss today to show you and explain. I'm going to open the consultation, a question that I have that people are asking right now. So I'm going to give the word to Natalia, who is here with me, and she can give me start to tell me the questions. Just real quick, this is my personal information, but we also have another email, which is the info, with everyone can write to the info. This is my BLP email if you want to ask me any direct questions too. Or you can also write Catalina if you want to ask any question to Catalina. Will refer the question to me at any moment. So I'm going to give the word to Natalia so she can start with the questions.
Thank you, Marco, and thank you all for joining us during this webinar. Yes, we have some questions here from some specific categories that you mentioned during the presentation. The first question we have here is that in the case of the rent-your residency process, if there is a specific kind of document that an applicant can use to prove the income that they have abroad.
Thank you, Natalia. Yes, as I mentioned in my presentation, we recommend 3 different documents. I know when I can give you these options, but it's always important, and this is something that I have to be clear. Immigration is always changing depending on the person. Every person's situation is different. So I cannot give you a straight recipe for everyone because everyone is different and they have different situations. So what we look for is for the lease agreement, income by dividends, or if you have investment that can produce you interest of $2,000 or more. But as I mentioned before, it will be important to first have a meeting and understand your situation and your needs in order to give you the best advice possible. Because at the end, this is very personal. Immigration processes are personal, and we need to adjust to the situation of the client, not the system. So there is options always, but we need to study the options. But those are the 3 that we recommend. That doesn't mean that there's no other option that we can manage or think about it.
Perfect. Thank you, Marco. And in the same page of rentier's residency, so in this case, if one of the questions that we received here is that if there is a way, or if a person have a different source of income, if this person can still apply for this type of category.
Yes, that's very, very good question. The mix of income, very good question. It is possible. It is possible. We can, and I'm going to give you an example of something that we already worked on with a client, and it was approved. The client receives a rent from, he rent his home for $1,400, and he has investment in a bank that produced him 1,500. So we mixed the interest he received from a bank and the lease agreement he has. Both of them combined were 3,000, so he could apply.
Perfect. Now, as a general question, here we have, if there is a specific amount of time that an applicant should spend in the country once they have the residency approved.
There is a lot of comments on this matter. I receive this comment very often, and this question very often. They are confusing. Some people confuse stay 1 day when you are a resident and a permanent resident applying to the temporary. Okay. Just to clarify, when people talk about, oh, you have to stay only 1 day in the country, is because if you don't come to the country 1 day per year, when you have to renew the process, you need to show your criminal record from your home country. That's the reason why you have to be 1 day in the country. That doesn't mean that applies for temporary residencies. That is a confusion. The 1 day rule is to avoid you to bring the criminal record from your home country. That's one. Second, the 1 day rule applies for permanent residencies, not for temporary residencies. That's a second mistake. Temporary residencies, according to regulations, because immigration has a lot of regulations around. It's a lot. So you need to know everything to get everything together and give you the best advice possible. The idea of become a resident in Costa Rica is that you're going to spend more than 90 days. That was the ruling that we have in the prior regulations. You can be a tourist for 90 days. I don't know if you remember all this. You can be a tourist for 90 days. And usually people stay 90 days, leave the country, come back, stay 90 days, leave the country, come back. So the idea to become resident is that you spend more than 3 months in the country. Otherwise, you don't need a residency. Because you're a tourist, you can be in a tourist matter here in the country. So what they ask is, okay, you want to become a temporary residency and live permanently in Costa Rica, you must stay more than 90 days in the country. I understand, because we have cases where the client says, Marco, look, I want to have a second home. That's what I want. I don't know what's going to happen in my country, because I want to have a second home. I cannot be there 90 days per year, because it doesn't have to be consecutive. It's in 1 year, you can stay 90 days. So what we recommend to do is, okay, try to at least spend a month and a half in the country. You don't have to be the whole month and a half in the country, but at least you can be here 3 weeks, then 1 week, then 2 weeks, then 2 weeks, month and a half, 2 months. And the rest of the time, we can explain, I cannot meet the rest of the time because I have business abroad, because of my health, because I have my family abroad, and I have to keep moving to my country. That is completely possible. That is not going to be a problem. But the idea you wanted to give it to the ATU is that 1 day rule is not for temporary residency. The 1 day rule is for other matters, it's for other categories.
Now, we have 2 very interesting questions. These are the last questions that we received. The first one is, well, this person says, if I apply under these categories, could I eventually qualify for permanent or even citizenship here in Costa Rica?
Very, very good question, that one. Yes, yes. After 3 years, we can change your status to a permanent residence. I know this is not the best news I want to give it to you, but the change of status will take a year. It's taking more than a year and 2 months. But yes, you can jump into on a permanent category. To apply for citizenship, yes, you can also be able to apply for citizenship, but we have to review the nationality. US citizens, Canadian citizens, for example, European citizens must wait 7 years living physically in the country to be able to apply for citizenship. Latin American countries, including Spain, must wait 5 years to change that status. But the key thing here for citizenship is they only count the days that you actually were physically living in the country. Not if you have 7 years with residence, is that you are actually physically living here. If you are older than 65 years old, you don't have to make any exams. If you're under 65 years old, you have to make Spanish and social study exams.
Great. Now, we just received another question here that I think is very important regarding the residency, especially for the rentiers. And it is, what is the current Social Security payment for the rentier category, since the income is of $2,500 per month?
All right. Well, with the last process we made last week, the current payment is $350 per family.
Great. Now, the last question that we have here, this is the final question, is that if by some situation the applicant is no longer able to meet the requirement of the minimum income that they should have to maintain the residency, if there's a possibility to lose the status here in the country?
Okay, that's very interesting question. If we cannot prove, because in the case of the income, if we are talking about the rentier, if we cannot meet at the end of the second year or prove at the end of the second year that you made a deposit of $2,100 per month, it's going to be complicated for us to renew the category. That's going to be an issue, unfortunately. If we cannot renew your category within the next 90 days after expiration, because we usually renew 3 months or 2 months prior to the expiration, but you also have an extra time, which is from the date of expiration, 90 days to complete the process. If we don't do this within that time frame, unfortunately, the immigration authorities will cancel temporary residency as a renter because we didn't renew it. We cannot renew it without the requirements. So what we recommend here to do is try to find a way to get the proof, to get any proofs, the proofs of income. We can be creative on this matter. We can work out and see of a solution, or even jump into another category. At the end, the idea is to check and review how you can maintain your residency in the country. So, yeah, I mean, if we do comply with the requirements, probably we can go to losing the category. But I don't want to think of the bad side. So it's better to talk and see other way to prove that we can generate more income in another way, or if we can jump into other categories, so you can maintain your residency in the country.
Great. Thank you very much, Marco. Now I may give the word back to Catalina, since we finished with this section of 4 questions.
Thank you, Marco and Natalia. It's been a lot of information to take in. I'm sorry. So again, as you can see, this subject there's a lot of information. There are a lot of specifics to each category, and it is important to know them before you make decisions of income, of how are you going to bring your income down, of what assets you're going to be purchasing, of what services or corporations or businesses are you thinking about starting here. If residency is something you want to pursue in that trajectory, then it's good to have at least a conversation since the beginning so that you can take advantage and not sort of do something that it's not going to be aligned with what you need in the end. Again, it's a very changing subject. As you can see, Marco and Natalia, they manage it and comprehend it fully. Marco has even been invited to participate in drafting of laws and norms and regulations. So he is up to speed with everything that's going on constantly and knows what to expect and what to look for, even though it's not under control of anybody, but at least a good reference to have. Again, you can follow BLP in your social media as blplegal.com. You can write to any of us at info@blplegal.com with any questions, inquiries regarding immigration or any other legal matter you might have. So thank you for joining us today. Thank you for the time. Thank you for investing this little while with us and sharing this morning with us. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.